Wow. Man. You are not messing around, I gotta say. I'm not messing around. Hey there. All right. You're spoiling me, seriously. This is as good as it gets.
Really? You're Snapple man?
I mean, it's been years, but Snapple and coffee. Angels. They're really good. Thank God, they're doing really, really well. There's a sprunglet on the way, God willing. Sprunglet number 6 is on the way. L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to you live. Yeah, we're coming to you live from the first domain. That's first with a U. And I said I would start at 7:10, did I not? So I should really not start for another 1 minute, because once I was unpunctual, and I told everyone the next time it would be, I think, very, very poor taste to start early after starting late. It's the worst of both worlds. And besides, this is such glorious Snapple. Really, all of you should get yourself a similar beverage. You should all just avail yourselves of the goodness that is Diet Snapple. All right.
Well, you know the Snapple cap. I opened one up the other day and said, "Did you know Akash
Did it say that? Did it say? Oh, it's 7:10. Without any further ado. Okay, so as always, this edition of the Shir in Megilat Esther is brought to you in memory of Joanne Tepler. May the neshama have an aliyah, and may the family have a nechama. And today we're going to begin the second chapter, Perek Beis of Megilat Esther. I don't think I did a particularly good job last time of setting the stage of the Megillah. The fact that I'm not going to make excuses. Doesn't matter. It is what it is. I would like to reiterate what it is that happened very, very briefly. So there's this Achashverosh guy, and he's king of Persia, and he's a severely disturbed human being. He's very, very disturbed. First of all, he has political problems. That's why, as the pasuk points out, he's always hamolech mehodu v'yad kush. He is molech. He's in the process of reigning. He's never fully reigning. The guy does not feel comfortable in the chair because he knows they're always gunning for him. The reason they're always gunning for him is because he's not a legitimate monarch. It's not like he's, everyone talks about Alexander the Great and the great conqueror that he was, which he was, but his army was given to him by his father, Philip of Macedon. So it's not, he had royal blood in addition to being an unbelievable conqueror. But here we have this guy, Achashverosh. He doesn't have any legitimate claim to the throne. And the only shred of legitimacy that he had was his dear departed wife, Vashti, who actually was of the royal blood. And last time we met her, we had to kill her because she refused. How dare she? The gall to dance naked for all of his friends. But the truth is, it's much worse than that, because remember, she emasculated him so badly, because he sends his guys first, before he sent the guys, the goon squad. First, he had to butter up all of his friends. So he's sitting there at the big table, and he's telling everybody how his toy is the greatest toy in the world. And of course, when he calls the toy does not show up. And that was just like, it was the end of the monarchy, because if she wins this battle, then there's no way anyone's ever going to take him seriously. And anyway, she gets killed on the advice of a guy named Memuchan. And as Chazal explained, Memuchan is in fact Haman. And why is he called Memuchan? Because the word Memuchan, says the Gemara, Shemuchan hu lepor anus, because he is prepared for consequences. He's prepared for punishments. He is being set up for bad stuff. Now, I don't think we spoke this out last week, but the word Memuchan, which Chazal explained means made ready, from the language of Muchan, but his name is not Muchan, his name is Memuchan. What would the extra mem do? So when you say in Hebrew, when you say Memuchan, it means he was made ready for. Muchan means he is ready for. Memuchan is he was made ready for. What's the difference? It means that there's an outside force that is the impetus for his readiness. What is that outside force? Mordechai. The reason that Memuchan's name is Memuchan and not Muchan is because he was set up. So everything that was set into motion in the Purim story, and the fact that Haman decides to kill all the Jews, is really the fault of a little Rabbi Yiddeleh named Mordechai. And that didn't, as we'll see later on in the Megillah, that didn't sit too well with everybody, because there were plenty of Jews that thought that was a terrible idea, because he's playing fast and loose with Jewish lives, that we'll see in the next chapter. So in any event, they kill Vashti, and the words that they say were like ringing through the ages, because when they said to kill her, they said, which means that the king will bestow her monarchy upon her friend who is greater than she, who's better than her. And of course, those words were used 500 years before. Yeah, like really about 500 years before. About 500 years before, at the time of the first Jewish king, whose name was Shaul, and Shaul was from the tribe of Benjamin, and Shaul failed to kill Amalek. He allowed the king to live. The king's name was Agag, and because he allowed the king Agag to live, the Navi Shmuel, the prophet Samuel, comes to him and says that God has stripped your kingdom away from you, and he's going to give it l'reacha hatov mimeka, to your friend who's better than you. Of course, who did that mean? It meant David, but it's exactly those same words that now are going to take away the malchut from Vashti and bestow it upon the descendant of Shaul, who is, of course, Esther. So with no further ado, let's meet Esther. Chapter 2, page 1253 in the stone. Here we go. Achar hadvarim ha'eleh. It was after these things, Kisho Hamas Hamelech Achashverosh, when the anger of Achashverosh relaxed. But the truth is, his anger did not completely relax. It only somewhat relaxed, because the Midrash explains that it doesn't say, if you wanted to say that his anger went away, you would say, Bishoch, in the forgetfulness of. In the forgetfulness of his anger, he was very, very enraged because his wife made him look absolutely terrible. By the way, you understand the fact that he killed her doesn't take away the fact that he was humiliated in front of literally everybody, and they all got Snapchat, right? So they were TikToking his humiliation. That doesn't go away so quickly. So even if you're still the king, you know they're snickering at you. So Kisho Hamas Hamelech Achashverosh means that he was actively suppressing his anger, but his anger did not completely leave. His anger eventually does dissipate towards the end of the Megillah, after Haman finally dies, where it says V'Hamas Hamelech Shachacha. So at the very, very end of the Megillah, this anger that was rooted here actually does go away completely. But at this point, it's only Kisho. It's in the process of going away. So he's still pretty pissed underneath it all. After these things, Kisho Hamas Hamelech Achashverosh, Zochar es Vashti veis asher asasa, veis asher nigzar aleha. He remembered Vashti and what she did and what happened to her. That's an interesting way of saying something. So usually, when you want to talk about some dear departed friend, you would say, I remember Billy Bob. Well, if you remember Billy Bob, it probably means that you remember what Billy Bob did. Probably means you remember what happened to Billy Bob, right? He went over the cliff one night in a drunken state, right? Okay, you remember what happened to him. So why does that have to say he remembers Vashti and what she did and what happened to her? That's three different things that he's remembering. So the Chazal explain that. Well, I shouldn't blame this on Chazal. This is my understanding. He remembers Vashti, that's the person. As the Gemara explains, she was gorgeous. I mean, Vashti, according to the Gemara, was one of the top 4 most beautiful women on planet Earth ever in history. That's like a pretty, yeah, right? That's a high mountain. So he remembered her. That's not easily replaceable. Listen, you lose a Ferrari. No, get another Ferrari. Yeah, you can get another Ferrari. Where are you gonna get another? I was gonna say, yeah, like I'm trying to think of who would be like on that level, but I don't know. Okay, so where are you gonna get another Vashti? Beis asher asasa. You remember what she did. He remembered what she did. Now the Gemara says, remember what she did. What is it that she used to do? That she used to make the Jewish girls who were her chambermaids, she would force them to work on Shabbos in the nude, just to put them down, because she was that type of person. So he remembered Vashti, says the Gemara, how beautiful she was and what she did and what happened to her, meaning that he made the connection between what happened to her and what she used to do to other people. That's what the Gemara says, right? So, and there's the connection between what she did and what happened to her. But now I want to take that even perhaps a step further. He remembered what she did and what happened to her. Here's the thing. What she did was correct. And he knows that. When they were plunged into a constitutional crisis when she refused to come to the king, thereby humiliating him in front of the whole thing. He didn't know what to do. He was bereft. And we said he went to all the advisors and he's like, what should I do? And they didn't know what to say. Because if they say kill her, he'll wake up tomorrow and miss her and then blame you and kill you. And if you say to him, don't kill her, he'll kill you right now because he's incredibly angry and he's drunk. Right? So Memuchan, thank God, took the bullet for everybody and came up with the idea that they should kill Vashti. But the point is, it went very, very quickly. You know what it almost reminds you of? Today's spin climate. Whether or not you are a savior of people or the Antichrist is largely based upon the powers that be on Twitter. How are people going to perceive you? You can fall just like that. Just like that. Jack Dorsey can go from being the greatest human being on the planet Earth to Jeffrey Epstein in lickety-split. Lickety-split. And we've seen this with so many people, right? Over the past couple of years, we've seen it with so many people. So he remembered what she did. What she did not deserve to mete out that punishment. And what was decreed upon her? And like, wait a minute, he's the one who decreed it upon her. So what do you mean he remembered what was decreed upon her? It means he saw what happened. He understood how quickly this occurred and transpired, and how that actually could be a threat against him as well. Because the same thing that happened to her can happen to him. And the man's a paranoid, very, very paranoid. We'll see later how that affects him. So, so the young men of the king, his advisors, not his advisors, his body men, Mishar Sav, the ones who take care of him, the ones who serve him. Listen, God, I have a great idea. Greatest idea on planet Earth. You're lonely? Your wonderful wife is gone? No problem. Here's what you do. You have a beauty contest. How many countries is he in charge of? 127. Listen to the math. It's unbelievable mathematics. You got to figure America's got 50 states. America's got 50 states, right? Give or take 380, 390 million people, 50 states. Just break it up by state. How many gorgeous, gorgeous women do you think there are in every state? 100? I mean, it's got to be at least 100, right? Maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000. I don't know what your math, like where you put them on the line of 0 to 10, but this is just only 10. Only 10. You have at least 100, at least 1,000. Who we fooling, right? Got to be 1,000 tens in a state, right? Florida's got what, 26 million people? Tell me there aren't 1,000 beautiful women in the state of Florida? You give me 300 for sure, yeah? 300, yeah? Okay, he's got 127 countries. That's a lot of girls. That's a lot of girls. But here's the thing. Who comes up with the idea? It stresses who comes up with the idea. Na'arei hamelech mishar sav. The young boys of the king. They came up with this idea. They ain't stupid. See, here's the thing. Here's what the king's going to do. They're going to bring 50,000 of the most gorgeous women on the planet Earth into this tiny little capital city. Oh, it's not tiny, but into the city of Shushan, right? And he's going to have a betting contest. It's like a beauty contest, only what they actually want to do with the beauty contest. But the best part is, he'll never manage to get through 50,000 women. Even Wilt Chamberlain didn't manage to do that, right? So obviously, there's no way that Achashverosh is ever going to get through all that. Well, that leaves a lot of leftovers, doesn't it? Shushan is going to be overflowing with tens. Overflowing. Who comes up with the idea? Na'arei hamelech. The young guys of the king. They're like, Your Majesty, we have a good idea for you. He's like, that's a great idea. That's good. It was a pretty good idea for them too. So vayafkid hamelech pekidim bechol medinos malchuso. So the king appoints people to be in charge. It's like, understand, Biden is like, we need a Secretary of State, we need a Secretary of the Interior, we need a climate czar, and Ahasuerus is like, we need talent scouts. So we need beauty hunters. That's who he's appointing for his 127 countries. And they will gather every beautiful virgin, El Shushan Habira, to Shushan the capital, El Beis Hanoshim, to the harem, El Yad Hegeh, Sris HaMelech Shomer Nashim, to Hegeh, who is the eunuch of the king, the one who's in charge of the women, right? Obviously, the people who were in charge of the harem were snippety snip. They were saris. The word saris means castrated. V'nason tamrukehem, and then they would get their Estee Lauder, right? Because you can't just take tens and drop them in the capital city. Obviously, got to put a little work in, right? A little effort. Thank you, a little effort. The hanara asher titav ve'nei hamelech timlo tachas Vashti, and the girl who the king likes will reign instead of Vashti. Vayitav hadavar beinei hamelech, vayaskein. And the king thought it was a great idea, and he did it. Yeah.
Is there any significance to the anonymous men who gave? Because there was a problem. Haman gave a solution. Now the women are coming, and it's
so this isn't one guy, right?
In charge. These young men, I mean, they're all in unison, jumped up and said, "Let's get girls," or it was the head, whatever servant.
So what does it tell you? It views them as a unit, right? So when it singles the one guy, whether, like you said, whether it was Mukhar or whether later it's going to be Harvona, whether it's going to be Mordechai, there are people like these individuals, they play a certain part. Right. When you come as a collective, that means that this is the collective. So how is the Megillah looking at this collective? Na'arei Hamelech Mishar Sav, the young guys of the king who take care of him. So it could have been the idea of one, it could have been, put forward by one, but the Megillah is looking at it as this, block. And that's why I would imagine that it has something to do with the fact that they are Na'arei Hamelech, the youths of the king. So I would assume. So the king does this, like, wow, this is a great idea. Because there's nothing, this is the mother of all rebounds, you understand, right? Some girl broke his heart. He's like, I am going to rebound, not just with someone better than you, but with everybody, literally everybody. Pasuk Hey, Ish Yehudi Haya b'Shushan Habira, Ushmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Shim'i ben Kish Ish Yemini. There was a Jewish man in Shushan, the capital, and his name was Mordechai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a man of Benjamin. Now, this, of course, is a contradiction in terms, because you begin by calling him Ish Yehudi, which means a Judean man, and then you finish by calling him Ish Yemini, which means a Benjamite man. Now, this is a distinction that does not really survive, because we are all Jews. But the truth is, we don't call ourselves Jews. That's a much later term, right? The Torah doesn't call us Jews. The Torah calls us Bnei Yisrael. We're not Jews. Where does the word Jew come from? The word Jew comes from Judea, as in the Eretz Yehuda, because after the kingdom split in the time of Rechavam, during the time of the king, the son of Shlomo, the son of Shlomo took over. His name was Rechavam. He raised taxes. It's a very, very bad idea to raise taxes on Jewish people. They don't like it. And the kingdom split. 10 tribes went north. They were exiled, hence the 10 lost tribes. The kingdom that remained was the kingdom of Judah, hence the term Jew. But there were 3, or rather 2.5 tribes that lived in the kingdom of Judah, and they were Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? Which is why if you meet a Jew today anywhere in the world, assuming they're not a convert, right? Because then they're not from a tribe per se. But if you meet a Jew anywhere on the planet Earth, you can be pretty sure that he's either from the tribe of Yehuda or the tribe of Binyamin or the tribe of Levi. Like he's not going to be from Gad or Zevulun or Shimon. This is not a thing, right? So here it's calling him Ish Yehudi, which means he is a Jewish man. And then it says Ish Yemini, that he's from Benjamin. Well, which one is it? Are you from the tribe of Yehuda or the tribe of Binyamin? So the Gemara explains that there are two meanings to the word Yehudi. And this does survive. Jew, even though Judaism is not supposed to be a religion, right? Because we are Bnei Yisrael, which is a nation, not a religion. However, Yehudi does denote a religion. And it means somebody who denies Avodah Zarah. Somebody who denies any form of pagan worship is by definition a Yehudi. That's the idea of Yehudi. That's Yahadut. That's what we are. Now, of course, this set us aside from every other religion at the time because, for example, like if you read the Kura cylinder, I'm pretty sure that he talks about Ahura Mazda there. Like I'm like reasonably certain that when he talks about rebuilding the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, he gives props to Ahura Mazda, which was his god. And there were many gods, right? We've spoken in other shiurs about like the gates of Nineveh that had tiles, a mural, and each tile depicted another ancestral god. There were thousands of tiles on these enormous gates. So even if they had their own god, but they would respect other people's gods as well. That's what set Judaism aside, because if you were a Yehudi, it's not like, look, let's say your patron god was the god of the ocean, and then you go to visit, your sister-in-law, and her god is the god of the clouds. So whenever you go there, you go to the cloud temple. And whenever she goes to the bar mitzvah over here, she goes to the water temple. And that's fine, and it's cool. It's like, yeah, I'm not a clouder. I'm more of an ocean guy myself, but I like getting down with the clouders every once in a while. But you can't do that with the Jew, because the Jew will not walk into your temple, whether it's a cloud temple, whether it's a water temple. He's not walking in. He's Ish Yehudi. So Mordechai was famous for the fact that he was, number one, Yehudi, very much a Jew, even though he was from Benjamin, number one. Number two, he was an official of the state, of the Jewish state, the Jewish collective, I should say, because the Jewish state was in mad disarray at this point. We keep mentioning that the Megillah is really very, very temple centric, that it's really all about the fact that they didn't want the Jews to ever go back to Eretz Yisrael, which is why he makes the Seudah at this time, because that was when he thought the 70 years were up, and it's why he wears the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, and it's why he brings all the things in the party again and again and again. We don't need to bring out every single reference that it happens. But according to the Gemara, Mordechai was actually sent to the kingdom to lobby for the Jews in Judea, who were a very, very trampled upon people. It didn't get so much better at this point. At the end of the Megillah, obviously it gets better. But where it really gets better is in the descendants in the Sefer of Nehemiah. So by the time of Nehemiah, when the Jews go back and they actually, really do rebuild and all that jazz. So Nehemiah was the cupbearer for the king of Persia, who was no doubt a descendant of this king of Persia. And he said, I want to go and help my people in Judea. So the Jews had a very, very bad time of it. They, it's sort of like the Yishuv. There were Jews who made Aliyah, but they were constantly attacked by the people that surrounded them. Like nobody wanted them to be able to get a foothold, to establish a firm foothold in the land. So he's a man, he is both a Yehudi and a Yemini, and he is the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, Ish Yemini. Now these names, Yair, Shimei, and Kish, these are very, very old names. We're not talking about his father and his grandpa and his great-grandpa. We're talking about Shimei ben Gera, who is a Jew from Binyamin in the time of David HaMelech. We're talking about Kish, who is the father of Shaul HaMelech. So the way that I see this, and I'm reasonably certain that this is true. You didn't come from nowhere. So if you were to map your personality traits, all your personality traits, we've discussed this in Sefer Bereshis, map the entirety of you, and you're like, I'm a unique individual because all these traits in this configuration is only me. That's true. In this configuration, it's only you. However, all of those traits, each and every one of them came from somewhere, none of them spontaneously generated. So you are a unique cholent of traits, but your traits have been there on your family tree forever, ever. And therefore, when you have someone who really knows like your family for a long time, generationally, like for example, the Rosh Hashiva Rabbi Zweig knows my father, knew my grandfather, knew my great-grandfather, and knew my great-great-grandmother. He also knows my children. So he is in a unique position to look at one of my cousins and be like, oh, I know why this kid is so funny, and I know why that one's so impatient, and I know why that one's got anger issues. I know because you see all the various traits coming through, trickling down over the years. That's where it happens. So by the pasuk connecting him, giving his yichus to these people, we're going back 500 years and more, and even more, 550 years. But we're saying just who Mordechai was as a person. I mean, this guy was a really, really exalted human being. We're connecting with very, very, very grandiose people. Asher hagla mirushalayim im hagola asher haglasa im Yechanya melech Yehuda. He was exiled from Jerusalem with the exile that was exiled, with Yechanya, king of Judah, asher hagla Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel, who the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar had in fact exiled. Now that's a lot of exiled in one sentence, right? He was exiled from Jerusalem with the exile that was exiled with Yechanya under the exile of Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, that's a tongue twister, is it not? So Gemara explains that he was actually not exiled forcefully. He chose to go to exile with the people who were forcibly exiled. He himself personally was not forcibly exiled.
Why not?
Why wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't one of the people that was grabbed and taken. Because Nebuchadnezzar didn't take everybody in this particular exile of Yechanya. He grabbed a lot of state officials. He wanted to install a puppet government in Judea. He wanted to water down the power of the state. So he took their Elon Musks and their Jeff Bezoses and he left them their, university professors, that kind of thing. So he left. He actually left to help the Jewish people in the diaspora, because he felt that either it was the lobbying gig, to help the Jews get back into Judea and build a temple under the auspices of the Persian government. Alternatively, because maybe he thought that he could do a better job there, because most of the Jews, certainly at this point, live outside of the lands of Judea. So he left. He self-exiled, according to the Gemara. Vayehi omenas hadasa, he Esther bastodo ki ein la avaim. This is pasuk Zion, and he adopted Hadassah. She is Esther, his cousin, because she doesn't have a father or mother. The hanara yifas toar v'tovas mar'eh, and the girl is very beautiful. Uvemosa via v'ima, and when her dad and mom died, likacha Mordechai lo levas, Mordechai took her as a daughter. Now this pasuk is, again, as every pasuk here, layered. And he is raising Hadassah. She is Esther. What? What are you talking about? He's raising Hadassah. She is Esther. He's raising Hadassah. What's her name? Hadassah. How about that? What do you mean he's raising Hadassah? She is Esther. So Gemara says, this gal's got two names. Why does she have two names? Well, either her name was really Esther and we call her Hadassah, or her name was really Hadassah and we call her Esther. Why? So the Gemara says, why we call her Esther? The whole Megillah is called Megillah Esther. What do you think the word Esther means? It means to hide. Exactly. It means hidden. The whole Megillah is a Megillah of being hidden. That's why Hashem's name does not come up in the Megillah. I mean, obviously we have the hints with the Hamelech business, but she's hidden. The whole idea of God's presence is hidden in the Megillah. It's not in your face. And Esther was also completely hidden, right? She wouldn't tell anybody where she's from, etc., etc. That's the idea of Esther. Another idea of Esther is that Hashem said to the Jewish people that when we sin, it says in the pasuk in the curses, "Vanochi haster aster panai mehem bayomahu," and the Gemara says, it's the Gemara in Chulun. The Gemara says, "Esther min Torah minayin." Where do you find Esther in the Torah? It does this by Haman also. It does it by Haman, Mordechai, Esther, and Moshe, which is strange because you say, why would Moshe be there? But we'll talk about that soon. So it says Esther min Torah minayin. Where do you find Esther in the Torah? And it says, "Vanochi haster aster panai mehem bayomahu," and I will certainly hide and re-hide my face from them on that day. Which means that Megillas Esther, on the one hand, is kind of like a happy thing because it turned out really well. On the other hand, we got really, really, really close to the frying pan. Right? Like the difference between the Holocaust and Purim was a game of chicken. It was so close. We were staring down the barrel of the gas chambers. And another difference, by the way, you should know, another difference between Auschwitz and Haman is that Hitler had to conquer Poland to kill 3 million Jews in Poland. And he had to try and conquer England to get to the English Jews. Achashverosh didn't have to conquer anybody to annihilate the Jews. They were already within his. Tell me, you think it was hard for Hitler to kill all the German Jews? No, that was very easy, right? He didn't have to outsource that. So this is, I mean, yeah. And anyway, so he is, so again, it's God is hiding himself from us during this period of time because it's not a good time. Now, why is she known as Hadassah? So the Gemara says, well, because she's Hadass. Hadass is a myrtle, right? It's called myrtle, isn't it? I think it's myrtle. Yeah. It says, why is she like a Hadass? One reason is because she was green. The Gemara says that she was green, which is strange. How do you square that with like she was so hot? I don't know if maybe people are into green, but it's like she was green. And another possibility is that myrtle, not too tall, not too short. Hadassim all grow basically around like the same height, the same size, right? Meaning Esther didn't really stand out very much. She didn't stand out, wasn't too tall, wasn't too short. She just kind of fit right in. Now, of course, if you think about that, that makes no sense. Why does that make no sense? Because you're painting her as the hottest woman on the planet Earth. How can you tell me at both sides of your mouth that like she's barely noticeable? Well, all the ones that were imported, but still, if she's a 10, I mean, that's still like, you notice a 10 when you see her, right? Or him. Yeah, you notice Brad Pitt. I notice Brad Pitt. Okay, for sure. No offense, right? But this is true. Yeah. So
that she was, yes, she was hot, but she didn't show it off purposely. She didn't walk around in a bikini.
Right.
She covered up.
Interesting. So, well, I'm not sure that modesty has a lot to do about, and also is that, but I certainly wouldn't limit it to that. So I once, when I was in high school, I saw this movie with, it's really embarrassing, Freddie Prinze Jr. It's She's All That. Oh yeah, Big Five, awesome. So now I feel a little bit better about myself right now. Thank you so much. Really, you really bailed me out. So I saw this movie, She's All That, and in the movie, there's this girl, Lainey. That's her name, Lainey, and in the movie, so like in the beginning of the movie, she's really ugly. She's like a nerd. Nobody's into her, right? And then of course, right by the end of the movie, you do like a makeover, and then she's like, wow, right? So it's like that kind of thing. So I think that Esther, I think, I don't know, but I'm saying when you read the words of the Gemara, I'm thinking it's kind of like She's All That, because you have this girl, Esther, and she's just gorgeous, but you would never know. Why? Because she wasn't doing her hair, and she wasn't getting dolled up, and she wasn't going to the mall, and she wasn't hanging out at the beach. So she kind of just looked like frumpy.
So how did they pick her out?
They did it. You'll see. It's awesome. So in order to know that she's smoking, you really have to look. You gotta look. So here's what happened. So she's beautiful. By the way, what's the difference between Yefei Toar and Yefei Mar'eh? So I think the difference is Toar is shape, and Mar'eh is well, yes, but what's the difference between the shape of your face and the look of your face? One is complexion and coloring and how it all comes together, and the other is structure. So the point is, whenever you see Yefei Toar, Yefei Mar'eh, it means beautiful of both, beautiful of form and beautiful of sight. It doesn't mean form as in your body. It means form as in your features. And then also there's the coloring of your features, right? And all the way that it kind of like comes together to make itself do. So she's very, very beautiful. And he takes her and he adopts her. She is his cousin because she has no father or mother. And she's very, very beautiful. And when her father and her mother died, I'm sorry, didn't you already tell me that her father and her mother died? Why do you have to tell me in the same sentence that her father and her mother died? And the Gemara explains, because the first thing is telling you that she was an orphan. The second time it's telling you that she literally never had a father or mother. Meaning what? Her father died the moment she was conceived, and her mother died at childbirth. This girl is legit like, I was gonna say Superman baby, right? Like they put Kal-El in like the little pod and like shoot him to a different world. Like this kid has no parents, okay? He comes up at the ranch. She's got no parents, literally no parents. Not just she's an orphan, she doesn't have parents. She never experienced having parents at any point of her life.
So tell me, apparently then she has no pedigree either, right? Because they're not mentioning the name of her father.
We do no. So we know
her uncle.
We know her father, because her father is Avichail. Because it says that Esther, we're going to see later that Mordechai's uncle's name is Avichail, and it will say Esther bar Avichail, and we know that he is the uncle of Mordechai. But here, where it's introducing her, correct? Not at all. Just saying she is an orphan and she never experienced father or mother, because father died conception, mother died childbirth. So Mordechai takes her as a daughter, and the Gemara says Livas as a daughter doubles up as Libayis as a house, meaning that Mordechai took her not merely as a daughter, but as a wife. Now, of course, that is what we would consider to be ew, right? Mucho disgusting, not to mention incredibly abusive. And right, it's like, ugh. But
then he's pimping her off too.
Right? It's just even worse. Right. But here's the thing, okay? There's a reason why it's hidden in the pasuk, right? So what's Mordechai thinking? I mean, the answer is pretty simple. Pretty simple. He's raising her. Why is he raising her? Well, initially he's raising her because there's no one to raise her, because his cousin, his uncle and aunt died. So he raises her, and he raises her right. And this girl is outstanding. She's outstanding. She is something special. And he's like, hey.
Mordechai single?
Mordechai single. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Vayhi bihi shama dvar hamelech v'daso, and this will answer your question that you asked before. Vayhi pasuk ches, and it was hi shama dvar hamelech v'daso, when the word of the king's message and proclamation was heard. Uvihi kavetzna aros rabos el shushan habira el yad Hegai. And when many of the girls were gathered to Shushan, the capital, to Hegai, and Esther was taken to the house of the king, to Hegai, the guardian of the women. Now, what do you mean? And when the king's message was heard, and when the girls were gathered, it already said that. So the Malbim explains, it says like this. It said before that the king appointed czars, secretaries, to go around and to gather up beautiful women. Now, what would you expect? What would you expect the most beautiful women from the 127 countries to do? Show up at the recruitment office. If you think you got a shot, you could be queen of not Micronesia. Like, you could be queen of everything. Yeah, pretty good, yeah. So obviously they're all going to show up, but of course, didn't work that way. Because number one, maybe not everyone shows up. Number two, Achashverosh is greedy. And number three, Achashverosh is a pig. Achashverosh is a pig. The Gemara says, look at the difference between Achashverosh and David HaMelech. Because we find by David HaMelech also in the first chapter of Sefer Malachim, it's a difficult thing to understand. We should learn the Gemara. We should learn it together anyway. We should. We will. God willing, one day we will. So it says that that when David HaMelech got old, they were looking for a beautiful girl to, keep him warm, keep him a little excited, kind of thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's the king. Exactly. I saw that movie. It's good to be the king. Yeah. So it says when that happened, all of the people that had beautiful daughters, they all wanted to go. But then with Achashverosh, it's exactly the opposite. What's the difference? Because David HaMelech, everyone wanted their daughter to be the one to go and take care of David HaMelech. And he never ended up, forget the fact that he didn't sleep his way through them. He didn't have tryouts. But even after Avishag Hashunamit was selected and she was actually taken, okay, you win, never slept with her. Achashverosh is exactly the opposite. He sleeps with everyone and chooses nobody. The guy's a pig. So, of course, everyone's trying to hide their daughters because they know he's a pig. So, I think 2 years. It's like crazy. So, yeah. So the first thing it was, anyone can come, but now it says, "V'hishama dvar hamelech v'daso." Now he says you have to bring everyone out. So originally, of course, Esther didn't go to the recruitment office, but now there's an edict saying everyone has to go. Then Esther was taken. So even then, they tried to hide her, even though it was very chavor and they would have gotten in trouble. And she is taken to the harem. And he likes her. Hey, guy is like, this girl is special. She's special. And Vayivahel is a language of to rush. He rushed her all the stuff, like immediately. Nothing can last. Nothing can wait. Vayivahel. Here, let's see what they translate. Yeah, he hurriedly prepared all of her lady stuff, her cosmetics, and her delicacies, and the seven maids of honor who are worthy of serving her from the king's house. And she and her girls, she and her squad were basically set aside from all of the people in the entirety of the harem. They got like the run of the place. So obviously she stood out. Now you would say, what is it about her that stands out from all the tens? And I think the answer is so unbelievably simple. There's one difference between her and every single other person that's in this contest. And the difference is everyone in this contest wants to win except her. Esther does not want to win. Esther wants to leave. Esther wants to get as far away as possible from that pig. And therefore, if she only has to go through that horrible indignity once, great. Great. Best possible scenario is she'll accidentally die in the harem. That's how she feels about it. That she'll accidentally die without ever having to meet the king. And if God forbid she has to meet the king, let it only be once. But you see, hard to getness has been a female tactic. We're on to you. Okay. Yeah. Has been a hard to get. It's been a good tactic for thousands of years. Esther never told anybody where she was from because Mordecai told her not to. You notice it doesn't say why Mordecai told her not to. It didn't say Esther didn't tell anyone that she was a Jew because that would have been dangerous. It doesn't say that. It says Esther didn't tell anyone that she was a Jew because Mordecai told her not to. That's it. That she didn't question why.
Okay, so was Mordecai prophetic right now?
Oh, that's a cool question. So the Gemara says that there were, I think it's actually conflicting Gemara. I think the Gemara has a machlokes with the Medrash because the Gemara says, I think 2 people, and the Medrash says, I think 4 people. But we'll go with the Gemara. The Gemara says there are 2 people that God showed them before the salvation that there was going to be a salvation. One was David HaMelech, one was Mordecai, meaning that he had indications that there was something brewing. So I'm not saying that he was not a prophet, as best I can tell, although Esther was. I'm not saying that Mordecai was a prophet, but he knew that something was happening.
Okay, because an argument that he wasn't, right, is that since Esther had to be recruited almost against her will, right, to get, et cetera. I mean, if Mordecai knew,
yeah, he's not. Mordecai's not a prophet.
No, right, but I'm saying he would have facilitated, pushed her into,
and he tries to do the opposite, right? He tries, instead of pushing her to the king, he tries to hide her. He tries to hide her in the bunker, and the guards got her. Bati lokach means she was taken.
So I guess he figures now that she's in it, might as well go.
Oh, good idea. Yeah, I have to repeat the questions. The question was Mordecai a prophet? And if he was a prophet, would he have actively pushed Esther into the situation knowing that she was going to be the salvation? And the answer on both cases is no. Mordecai was not a prophet, though Esther was. The Gemara says that Esther was one of the 5 prophetesses. Right? 5? It doesn't matter. It's 5. And Mordecai, though, was not. And also, even if he was a prophet, you don't do things that are prohibited unless you have an explicit directive to do so. So he still couldn't do that. So even if he knew prophetically that she would be the queen, he would still have to try as hard as he could to prevent that. So, yeah.
What I'd like to know is if they're requiring virgins and she's a married woman.
Oh, what a beautiful question. Yeah. So Lily wants to know if they're taking only virgins and she's a married woman, how does that work? I thought that the Virgin Mary was the only one who knew how to play that game. So so I think it's either the Gemara or the Malvin that asked that question. I'm trying to remember which it was. I don't remember, but in any event, they started with virgins and ended up taking even people who weren't.
Also, a quick question. So you said that Esther was the only one who didn't want to see the king. All the other women wanted to be queen. But then before that, you said that all the men, the fathers, didn't want their daughters to be queen.
Right.
Asha's favorite was a pig.
Right.
Why did the daughters want to be queen, but the fathers don't?
Excellent. So Stephen's asking that why, how come you're saying before that the fathers didn't want their daughters to be taken to the king, and yet we're also saying that all the girls who are there want to be king. So I'll tell you why I don't think that's a stira, why it's not a contradiction. The reason that the fathers don't want their daughters to go is because they suspect that their daughter won't be queen. She'll just be a throwaway, toy. She'll be nothing. The daughter, once she's there, now you want to win because you have 2 choices. Either you'll be thrown away and you'll be just a number in the harem, or you'll get to be queen, right? So once you're there, you do want to be queen. It's possible that there were plenty of girls who want to be queen anyway. But in terms of if you're the dad, no, right? It's like you're the dad of the kid that plays guitar really, really well, and he wants to be a rock star. And you're like, yes, Chaim, you're really good at guitar, but could you please concentrate in your accounting class? Because in case you don't become Bruce Springsteen, at least you could be Chaim Yankel Esquire, So I would imagine it's something like that. So Esther doesn't tell anyone where she's from. And every single to know how Esther is doing and what would become of her. And as it came, the turn of every single girl to come to King Achashverosh, this is the greatest pasuk in the Megillah because it just shows you how crazy this guy is. At the end, when is it the turn of each girl to go to the king? At the end of 12 months, because you can't just go to the king. I know you think you're hot, but you ain't much. You ain't much. First, we're going to have 12 months of foo-foo, Mark Jacobs is taking care of you for 12 months. 12 חודש כי כן ימלאו ימי מרוקיהן. 6 חודשים בשמן המור ו6 חודשים בבשמים ובשמרוקי אנשים. 6 months in myrrh. You know that store Lush? Great store, right? Great store. So this was like Lush. They would just drop you in a bath. For 6 months, you're in the myrrh bath, and then for 6 months, you're in the fragrance bath. I mean, like, this is some serious stuff. And like this, the girl would come to the king. Anything that she wanted would be given to her to accompany her. From the harem to the king's palace. Rashi says, meaning you want a violinist for your evening? No problem. You can have a violinist. You want the swings and chains and 50 shades of Achashverosh? No problem. Whatever you want, you can bring. Remember, you're going to be the queen of Persia. Yeah, take your best shot. Right? Take your best shot, and we're footing the bill. Remember, we got the Amex black card on the company. It's not a problem. So, but Erev hiba, and in the evening she would come. And in the morning she's out. So it's like the Dr. Seuss book, The Sneetches, right? They come in one side, they go out the other side. There was nothing. It was a train station. They would go in at night thinking they got a shot, and in the morning they would just go right to the house of the concubines. Lo savo od el hamelech ki im chafetz bo hamelech v'nikra b'shem. She would never again be allowed to come to the. I have to sneeze. Excuse me. Thank you. She would never again be allowed to go to the king unless the king wanted her specifically and called her by name, which means that once she had her shot and missed, she might have to sit in a room for the rest of her life.
Right.
Terrible. Uvehagia tor Esther bas Avichai odod Mordechai. And when it was the turn of Esther, the daughter of Avichai, the uncle of Mordechai, that he took her as the daughter of Olamel to come to the king. You say to yourself, why are you telling me when it was the turn of Esther, the daughter of Avichai, the uncle of Mordechai, that he took as a daughter? I know all these things already. So Malcolm explains, because what made Esther so special was not just the fact that she was a 10. Remember, as you said before, who else is a 10? Everybody else is a 10. You know how you want to go to Harvard and you're like, but I'm really smart. Like, yeah, dummy. The other 10,000 people that applied from Harvard also got a 1600 on the SAT. You think you're going to get in because you got us a 1580? You're not getting a 1580. Now, if you speak Mandarin and you also play the tuba and you volunteer in Guadalajara every year, then maybe we'll take you, especially if you have an ancestor who was from an indigenous tribe in the Yukon, right? Otherwise, you forget about it. We don't need you, right? So what made Esther so special is each one of these elements of her personality. The fact that she was the daughter of Avichai, who was the daughter of Mordechai, that he took as a wife, meaning the same things that Mordechai saw in her that made him want to take her as a wife. So did everybody else see those things. She was very royal. The only remotely similar thing that I can think of is Diana. Like, I remember as a kid, I remember Princess Di. So first of all, like, you guys are young, okay? You guys are young. Me? Yeah. I remember Princess Di. Princess Di was beautiful. Just beautiful. Inside and out. Inside and outside. And she would be hugging all the babies, and she'd be crying with the unfortunates, and she'd be talking, right? She's just like everyone who met her, she stole their heart. You'd meet her for a second, like the president of the United States, and you want to dance with her. And you're John Travolta, and you want to dance with her. And you're like, everyone except her husband. It's such an idiot, right? No, Camilla. Really? Camilla? Don't know what's wrong with that guy. But anyway, so I think it's like that, but just on crack, right? So everybody who sees Esther everybody who sees Esther is like unbelievable. And we're going to talk even more in a minute. So it's her turn. To come to the king. She didn't ask for anything. Why didn't she ask for anything?
She wanted to be attractive.
Because she didn't want to win. The only thing she did was what was told to her to do by the chief eunuch. And Esther found favor in the eyes of every single person who ever saw her. And we understand from this, what does that mean? It means that everyone saw in Esther the best of their people. So if you remember, if we go all the way back to the student of Achashverosh, when everyone's bragging about how beautiful the women are in their country, right? So the Hindu Kush people are like, the Hindu women are the best, and the people from Tibet, say the Tibetan women are the best, and the people from Korea, right, etc., etc., etc. That started the whole thing in motion anyway. Esther has no people. Everyone sees in Esther, she's one of us. She's one of us. So each person, no matter where they were from, the Tunisians were like, that girl's clearly got some Tunisian blood. I mean, have you seen her make a soup? Right? It's clearly, there's some Tunisian here, right? And this is how people, so she was no same be'enei kol ro'eha. She was able to connect with absolutely everyone, which, remember, Achashverosh's whole point was there's not going to be any one nation that's going to be in charge anymore. We're the ultimate populists. We're the globalists. Achashverosh was a globalist. That's the word I should have used last time. I don't think I used it. He's a globalist. It doesn't matter if you're French or if you're German or if you're British or if you're Italian. It's the European Union. We're all together. We're just one thing. It's Mama Europe. It's Mama Europe. Now, that was a tenuous thing because there were many, complicated and complex relationships there between peoples. And it was a hard confederation to keep. But Esther is the perfect person to keep a union like that together. And Esther was taken to Achashverosh in the 10th month, which is Teves, in the 7th year of his reign, which is really cool because the Gemara says, why are you pointing out when Esther was taken to Achashverosh? I mean, who the heck wants to know that? And the Gemara says because Teves is equivalent to, I would say, December, give or take. Teves is December. December is cold. It's cold. Says the Gemara. Teves is a time where flesh on flesh is very comforting. It's very nice. Imagine we're talking Persia here, yeah? You really want your night with the king to be in the middle of a 180-degree night in August? Is that, you sure? You sure? I don't know, right? No, right? But December, right? That's what the Gemara says, right? So God plans out the whole thing. I'll tell you another proof where we find this. Last week's parsha. This is the craziest pasuk in last week's parsha. I'm telling you, this is a pasuk. The pasuk says that Moshe is talking to the Jewish people. They're about to leave Egypt. They've been slaves for hundreds of years. And he turns to them and he says, Hayom atem yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv. Today you are leaving in the spring. Yeah. That's okay, thank you. Like, what's the point of that? So the Gemara says, what does that explain? It says Hashem could have taken you out into the desert in June. Freaking hot. Or he could have taken you out in February and you freeze. Hayom atem yotzim b'chodesh ha'aviv. God made it perfect. You're leaving in the beginning of the spring. It's beautiful weather. You walk outside to the desert. You're like, da, 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 da. It's nice, yeah? So you see that Hashem really made all the little things, they all come together perfectly.
How was her attitude though, the night of? Like,
I'm sure she was very morose and disgusted, and there was probably a lot of gagging involved.
But her attitude-wise?
So the Gemara said she was karka olam,
Meaning?
which means she was totally, I was asking what was her attitude? Completely passive. It was a rape. She was not an active participant.
Right. And wouldn't that tick him off?
You'd think. But Achashverosh, yes. So Achashverosh is a person who can have nothing to do with dominant and assertive women. So who's the girl he falls in love with? The ultimate dish rag. The ultimate non-assertive woman. Right? So it's not crazy when you examine the psychology of the man. Oh, we're overtime, but that's okay. So we have to finish the parak. Anyway, and the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found more favor in his eyes than all the virgins. And he put the crown atop her head and made her monarch in place of Vashti. And the Gemara from this understands, what do you mean that he liked her better than the women? He liked her better than the virgins? This, the Gemara understands that whenever he was interested in, again, it's the same kind of thing in terms of like the pliability issue of Esther and the malleability issue of Esther. Whenever he was interested in the experience of a virgin, that's what he found with her. And whenever he was interested in the experience of a woman who was more experienced, that's what he found in her. Why is that the case? Because again, remember, Esther is the ultimate non-assertive person. She's not pushing any particular narrative. It's all you. It's all you. So everyone who sees her thinks that she is from their people. And Achashverosh finds within her whatever's in his mind. And he's just madly, madly, madly in love with her. And the king makes a big old party for all of his officers and all of his servants. It was the party of Esther. And he gave rebates, not rebates, hanachot. The hanacha is a sale, like to lower the price. It's like a break on the taxes. Gave tax breaks to all the people. And he gave out presents like the hand of the king. What's with he did this and he did this and he did this? So Chazal explain, the reason that he made this big party is because he wants to know one thing. There's something that he really wants to know. What does he want to know? What does he want to know? Who is she? Who is this person? So first he makes a big party and has everybody there. So no, time for the big reveal. Somebody come up and claim her? Nothing, crickets. Like, really? Okay. So now he gives tax breaks to everybody. You can imagine if he loves Esther so much that he's making an international party for her, and he loves Esther so much that he's giving tax breaks to all of the countries because of how much he's crazy about her, then can you imagine the goodness that's going to come to the people who will actually claim her?
Why doesn't he ask her?
He does.
And
nada.
And again, that doesn't tick him off.
You'd think, right? There's only one possible answer to that question, right? Doesn't he ask her? Ours says, doesn't he ask her? How could she not tell him? He's the king. There's only, I'm convinced there's only one answer to this question. Maybe there's more answers to this question, but here's the question. Here's the way that I understand it. There's one very simple answer to the question. I'm an orphan. I was left at the fire station the night I was born. I don't know. That's a pretty good point. What are you going to say to that? You're gonna torture the truth out of her?
Well,
she's like,
where were you raised? Where did you go to? I don't know.
Oh, I can tell you where I was raised. I was raised in an orphanage. She's like, I'm looking for the other half of this locket. Can you help me? Like there's I think that was her that was her party line. At least I would imagine that it was. So he's getting nothing. And he's giving out massive gifts, nothing. And as he gathered virgins again, and Mordecai is sitting in the gate of the king, what kind of a sentence is that? That's a strange sentence. Why would he do another beauty contest? Didn't he find Esther already? Isn't he crazy about Esther? Is he happy with Esther? Why is he doing this again? And why are you connecting that to the idea that Mordecai is sitting in the gate of the king? So Chazal explain that he's going crazy because he doesn't know where she's from, and that is very off-putting to him. Because that's dangerous. Anything that he doesn't know, it's potentially dangerous. So of all people, who advises him? Mordecai. Mordecai advises him. Mordecai Yosheb B'Shar HaMelech. Mordecai, who's a massive genius and a member of the Sanhedrin, advises the king. Of course, they don't know that, he doesn't know that Mordecai does not want him going anywhere near Esther. What was Mordecai's advice? Mordecai says, listen, Your Majesty, very simple, very simple. If she's just a regular woman, what's going to drive her crazy? Because you haven't been able to get to her yet. What's going to drive her crazy? Jealousy. We'll make another beauty contest. she'll go crazy and then she'll have to tell you. That's how you'll get her to say. Or she's really some kind of nefarious sleeper agent. But if she's a nefarious secret agent, then it's going to be threatening to her that you're starting another beauty contest because she has to be the prime attention in your life. And therefore, once again, she will show up. So either way, she's going to have to come to you and tell you who. Now, meanwhile, why is Mordechai saying this? Because it's perfect. Because Esther doesn't want to go anywhere near Achashverosh. Go have as many beauty contests as you want. Please take a long time. Go have another 10-year beauty contest. Please, I'll be. If I never see you again, it'll be too soon. Like this. So Mordechai's alongside that. Wow. There's two possibilities. One possibility is that the question was, were there no corrupt Jews that would throw her under the bus, right? That's a legit question. How could you not? I mean, if you know Jews, right, you're gonna have that question. So there's two possibilities. Possibility number one is no, they didn't, and that's like an enormous praise for them that they were able to sit on that kind of information. The second possibility is exactly that they didn't know, right? Because she was a Sufi, right? She was Esther, and she was an orphan. So that's the other possibility. So. Even both good, right? So they get more women now. Esther does not tell where she's from or her nation. Mordechai, as Mordechai had commanded her. And everything that Mordechai said to do, Esther would do, just like when she was being raised by him. Now, didn't you already say that Esther is not telling people where she is from? You already said that before. So why do you have to reiterate that Esther is still not telling anybody where she's from? And the Gemara explains, because I'm sorry, not the Gemara, it's the Malbim. The Malbim explains that the first time was when she was nobody. She was just some girl in the harem of the king. Now she's the queen. The fact that she's still doing what Mordechai had told her to do when she was a little girl, when she's now the queen of the world in a position of power, of massive influence, that's a different thing. And you would think maybe at this point she's gonna make her own decisions. And the pasuk says, no, absolutely not. She's still doing exactly what Mordechai said. We have 3 more psukim, and then we will move to Chumash Shemit Hashem. In those days, Mordechai Yoshev Bishar HaMelech, and Mordechai is sitting in the gate of the king. This is great. Katzaf big son v'aseresh neso Yisei HaMelech mishamrei Asaf. Big son and Seresh, Katzaf. The word Katzaf they say means plotted, but the truth is Katzaf really means they got angry. Big son and Seresh got angry. They are two officers from the inner guards of the king, meaning they're basically secret service. And they wanted to assassinate Yamamoto. They wanted to kill King Achashverosh. Now, we mentioned last week, and I think this is a great find. Like, who are Big Son and Seresh? Well, and what? So if you look in the two lists of seven officers of the king, the first one is Mehuman Bizisa Harvona Bigsa Va'avagsa. I think Bigsa is big time. And then later on, with the second list of 7 Sarei Paras Umadai, is Karshna Shesar Admasasar Shishmeris Marsana Memuchan, and the second one is Shesar. If you unscramble those letters, you get Seresh. So what you have here is Big Son and Seresh are each officers from the 2 different branches of the closest officers of the king. The reason why it was such a successful plot is because it wasn't 2 guys from the Secret Service. It was 1 guy from the Secret Service and 1 guy from the CIA, or 1 guy from the FBI and 1 guy from the NSA. And they were able to conspire together from their specific places in the government in order to kill the king. Now, why didn't it work? Because the plot became known to Mordechai. He told Esther the queen, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordechai. How the heck did Mordechai figure out about this plot? And the answer is, says the Gemara, it was mentioned before that Mordechai was on the Sanhedrin, and Mordechai spoke 70 languages. Mordechai he is known in the pasuk in the Tanakh as Mordechai Bilshan, which means Mordechai the linguist, Mordechai the man of the Lashon. he understood people and he understood languages. So here you have two guys who are talking Tunisian next to the old Jew, thinking, ain't no way that guy knows this language, because why the heck would he? Nobody does. We are from the far reaches of Asia. Meanwhile, he's sitting there, reading his Gemara, yeah, writing down the notes of the plan. Yeah, and that's how it happened. And the matter was investigated and found. Why is that to say, and it was investigated and found? Just say, and they killed them, because obviously it was found. It means that there had to be, that it wasn't simple to do. It was a very, very careful plot, and they had to search for it, and they succeeded. And it was touch and go. It was touch and go. Vayitlu, vayitalu shnehem al eitz, and they were both hanged. Vayikasev v'sefer divrei hayamim lefnei hamelech, and it was written in the book of remembrances before the king. And the rabbis ask, what do you mean, the book of remembrances before the king? Malbim says, why don't you just say the book of remembrances? And the answer is because there are two books of remembrances. There is an official book of remembrances, which is the National Chronicle, and then there's the king's personal book. And this was written in the king's personal book. And it was a good thing that it was, because if it was written in the general one, there was a certain guy by the name of Haman that probably would have made sure that it got scrubbed. But it was in the king's own personal book, and therefore it could not get scrubbed. And therefore later on, it was going to feature mighty heavily in the story. And that brings us to the end of our second chapter of Megillas Esther. Once again, Le'iloi Nishmas Joanne. The neshama should have an aliyah. Yeah, let's do a 2-minute break if you don't mind, and then if you guys are up to it, if you've got the stamina, then we're gonna learn some Chumash, man. Because Parshas B'Shalach, you understand, is of course intricately tied to the Megillah, because in Parshas B'Shalach, the people who come out to attack the Jews are of course the ancestors of Haman. The Amaleks come to attack the Jews at the end of Parshas B'Shalach. So I mean, how could you miss that? There's a little teaser for you. So, ladies and gents, I will be back in dos. He says, I can't remember who says this. I can't remember if it's a medrash. Somebody draws the inference from the end of the pasuk where it says, "Bayamim ha'hemu Mordechai yoshev b'shar hamelech kotzaf bigzon v'asera shnei tzavei hamelech b'shar me'asav." Meaning, what is the connection between? In those days, Mordechai was sitting in the gate of the king, and Bigson and Seresh were upset. And from there they understand that they were angry at the fact that the king had elevated a Jew to such a high position, and that was the impetus for it. But I don't know. I don't know if that's why. But that is definitely a theory that is out there. Yeah. Why does Mordechai have the king's back?
He's not a prophet, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
How does he have this immense foresight that he needs to earn the king's good grace?
So why it would appear that the only reason he wants to be there is because Esther is there, and he wants to have an excuse to be in the palace of the king. So Achashverosh, when it talks about Shushan Habira, this is something that we didn't speak out. Maybe we should have. Shushan Habira is not the city of Susa. It's a city within a city. It's the royal city. It's what the Chinese would call the forbidden city, right? So where the emperor lives is the forbidden city. You're not allowed in there. Like, only people who are supposed to be there are allowed in there. So he needed to have an excuse to be there. So that's a simple reason. But in terms of you do see a modicum of hesitation, because when he had an opportunity to save the king's life by revealing the plot, he didn't tell the king. He told her, which means he was giving her the option to tell the king or not to tell the king. And if she doesn't tell the king will be no more. Right? So you see this ambivalence, like he did let her make that decision, and not he didn't take that decision. Told him? I don't know. She didn't. It's clear from later that she didn't, because she didn't want to go to the king when it came crunch time. So I don't know why she did. I don't know why she chose to do that. But yeah, I mean, it says she told him in the name of Mordechai. Maybe she wanted to get Mordechai some points. That's possible, but I don't know. There. And you know what?
I still keep finding hard though, Rabbi, I mean, didn't anybody know her, Esther, when she was a little girl? Even though
It's not that. They could have been friends with her growing up. They would just not know what her nationality would be because she was adopted. So they could, I mean, they could be best friends with her and they could be her sorority sisters.
I just find it a little hard that even if she came from an orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard to think that somebody in like the furthermost provinces of the kingdom would drop her off. And
It's an international city. If there's an orphanage in New York, it doesn't mean that the kid's American because there are so many ethnicities and nationalities in New York. It's an international city. Shushan's also an international city.
oh, she can't. But did she come from Israel?
No, she's in Shushan.
She was always
Yeah,
in
she's there. She's right in the middle of things. So yeah.
When you were saying earlier, just a side comment
Mhm.
about where we're from, you said we're either from Yehuda.
Yehuda ben Yamin or Levi,
Why not the others?
because they were exiled.
And
The
then-
northern kingdom was lost from the Assyrians. The Assyrians under Sennacherib IV
so
exiled
no
them.
Jew ever.
That's a machlokas. The 10 lost tribes, whether they'll come back or not, and you know
Well,
who
that's
they
for
are.
sure,
And
but
yeah.
I mean, that means they were totally annihilated. If none of us today are
Mm.
descendants, I mean, it's either yay or nay.
So that's a machlokas in the Gemara in Shabbos, I think, and also in Sanhedrin, I want to say.
Okay.
Meaning the Gemara in Shabbos is asking if they'll ever come back. The Gemara in Sanhedrin is asking if the 10 tribes have a chilik olam haba, and I suspect that that's the same question. Okay. Whew. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pivot. Let's pivot. Wait a minute, but I need to have a new recording for this.
Okay with the lubrication there?
Yeah, I'm good for now. No, I'm good for now. I'm just gonna stop the recording and start it again and see if that will help me because you know it's gonna be 2 sessions. So 1 sec, let's see.